would you like to talk a little bit about the drug development side of stuff in the future?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, the way drugs are created today, I think I don't know what I mentioned previously, but essentially you start off with thousands of compounds. You run them on like a simulator. You get to a couple hundreds. You have your chemists make them. Once they make them, you test them in mice. Few don't work. You test them in rats. Maybe some of the rats died. Those don't work. They're too toxic, right? You get to like larger mammal studies, and you get to ape studies, and then you go to human trials, right? And all this stuff happens, and you filter to like a lead candidate from like thousands. You have one, and that goes into phase one. The likelihood of that becoming a drug at the end of it is like less than 7%, right? So even after all this filtering, you have one lead candidate, 7% shot, it becomes a drug. And so that's how medicines are created today. And as a result of that, the way medicines work on a population is also like completely, it falls like a bell curve, right? Like every other sort of natural, or natural way that things shake out in like probabilistic fashion. Like when a drug works, it really only works well for like a subsection of people. And the example I was giving, we were talking about this before the podcast. When they say a drug works 70% of the time, what that actually means is that a drug will work really well the way it's supposed to, and the way you think about it working 40% of the time. It'll work kind of well for 30% of people. Maybe for 20% of people, it won't work at all. It just won't do anything. For like 8 to 9% of people, it'll be slightly bad. So they should get off it as soon as possible. And for like that last 1 to 2%, like it could be really devastating for them. Like the consequences of taking that drug could be bad. And I mean, you hear about this stuff all the time where someone goes in, they take medication, the medication makes it worse, right? And that's because, like the doctor isn't like a bad doctor. Like when the doctor sees a patient, like the information they have is like, this drug works 70% of the time. If I don't give them this drug, the alternative is not giving them this drug. And that's terrible for the patient. So I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to give them this drug, see what happens, maybe potentially switch them off, maybe adjust the dosage, whatever that means, right? But that's the doctor's job. So you have this asset that's really not, it's designed quote unquote for everyone, but it's really like just came like randomly, right? You randomly tested it and you got it. You know how it works kind of like mechanistically a little bit, you know how it works. But most of that's just tested. The doctor's job is to understand you, understand your body, and then figure out if that drug's right for you. But that's only really possible with data and information. Like I think most Americans that have gone to the doctor, like the doctor doesn't spend more than 20 minutes with you, right? Like that's a good day where you got a lot of time with the doctor, right? I've heard of doctors in an 8-hour shift seeing like 40 patients. That's not unheard of, right? And so that, like, you do the math on that, let's say like 40 patients, that's 20 patients in 4 hours. So every hour they're seeing 5 patients. And we do the math on it, that's 12 minutes. Plus you got to log it into the EHR. They got to take notes. They got to take bathroom breaks. They got to take lunch. They're spending like 5 to 10 minutes with a patient. The likelihood that doctor gets all the information about you to make an educated decision on like how your disease works, how the mechanism of that drug works, and then deliver it to you in the right way. I mean, it's just not going to happen. You can be the best doctor in the world. You're not doing that, right? You could maybe do that if you had like 4 hours and a bunch of data, right? Or maybe that's too long, but yeah, you need like an hour or two at least, right? To sit through someone's file, look at what's going on, look at their genome, look at their proteomes, like figure out like, how does this disease work? Like, how am I actually helping this person? How does the medication I'm giving them work? What's the interplay between that, right? Like you need data, you need AI, you need computers to make that decision. But, just the way medicine's been done, a doctor has to sit there and, they don't have the tools to make that decision. And so with Health Exchange, we sort of want to do 2 things. One is actually create better drugs. We have these drugs that like kind of work okay for like everyone, but what we want to do is shift that more to like a risk stratified model where, to be eligible for this drug, there's certain things that need to be true about you. Like, for example, your genes have to have like this mutation in a certain way, or like your protein levels need to be high. But if those things are true, this drug will work like not 70% of the time. If those things are true, this drug will work like 98% of the time, right? And so the idea is you get better outcomes because you created a better drug and you've created like more boundaries on when and where the drug is going to be used. So it's much more precise. It's not just like throw like ibuprofen at the patient and then see what happens, or throw antibiotics and see what happens. It's more like we know exactly what's going on and this is going to solve it in this way. Right. So I think that's really the vision we're aiming towards. And, that's also very valuable, right? Like in an economic perspective, right? You are essentially like curing a disease. So there's less costs 10 years from now. And so an insurance company, for example, would pay for that drug, would pay a lot more for that drug than another drug that works kind of okay, right? Because essentially, like for them, it's a risk argument like everything else. It's if I give them this drug that works 98% of the time and they check all the boxes, then I have to pay less on their healthcare, right? Than if I have to give them another drug, because I've given the other drug over like a pool of 10,000 patients. Some of them aren't going to work. Some are going to drop off. They're going to go back to the hospital and that doctor's going to charge me, the insurance company, again. I don't want that, right? Like I want to get this like done quickly, cost effectively. So I would rather use the more effective drug, even have to pay a little bit more, right? Because essentially I still save money in the long run. And so, yeah, I mean, the idea is these drugs would be better for the people who are taking them, and it would save money for the system because it's actually working, right? There aren't these like off-target, like inactive drugs. So yeah, I'll pause there again, but like this is like the vision that we have for the future, where we're really tailoring medications and recommendations based on a person's data. And we're also generating the drugs that can be used in the future once you actually like figure out who needs what.
Unchecked governments have eradicated privacy and truth. Those who resist are brought down swiftly, but we refuse to submit. Unipunks are freedom fighters, protected by encrypted shadows. The future we're building is sovereign and uncensorable. The moonlit night is coming.